there is actually another form of censorship that's been going on, and it's not necessarily just on the one side. And I've written about this in my Substack. There is this thing called credentialism, where if you have the right credentials, then your voice is heard, and if you don't, then you're either dismissed or even worse, you're discredited. And there was memes about this in the early days. You know, what do you know? You're not an epidemiologist, which is kind of strange because most people had never heard of an epidemiologist before sort of March 2020. And yet all of a sudden, epidemiologists were like, you know, the brain surgeons of the modern era, the most revered scientists in the world. But in actual fact, they weren't necessarily the smartest. And we saw that with the infamous appalling modeling done by Professor, I forget his name
Neil
actually.
Ferguson.
He's been Neil Ferguson. He's been out of the limelight for so long, thank God. But anyway, so that's actually another form of censorship that hasn't been explicitly covered, and I would say I fall very firmly into that. Not that I'm bothered by the fact that Nick said I'm the only one who's not a doctor in that group, and that's actually kind of underlies my story that originally I was rubbing shoulders, if you like, with these epidemiologists. Knut Viskalski was mentioned. It's a real shame that I've not heard his voice in a long, long time. But I was batting off him a lot in the early days on LinkedIn, and that was my first deplatforming, which took me to Twitter, and this is all within 2020, so the first few months of the pandemic. And another point to make is that I never looked for this. I'm quite an introverted person. I only had a few hundred followers on LinkedIn, never posted anything really, just a few business related things, and then kind of found myself accidentally in the limelight, which brought me introduction with Claire Craig, who brought me into Heart, and the start of my Twitter career, if you like, which was quite short-lived. Rapidly went up to almost 50,000 followers, but very quickly taken down when I hit that for carrying on talking about the things that nobody else. Well, the platforms didn't want you to talk about: why lockdowns don't work, why masks don't work, why asymptomatic spread is a thing. Early treatment, I covered ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine back in the middle of 2020. So all of these things. And then finally, the final straw was reporting about the potential risks for pregnant women. And I shared a video that Mike Eden was in and a few other experts, and that was kind of strange that, you know, they would take this down for such a high risk category, that prior to this, you know, nobody would have even contemplated subjecting them to this kind of treatment for at least 10 years of history. So on the back of the Twitter ban, I went to Substack, which I found to be a much friendlier place and a lot more productive. And I would say, you know, more to the essence of what science is, even though I'm not a scientist, where you really could express yourself, and you could also debate with other people in an environment that didn't feel like you were being discredited, that wasn't toxic, and therefore was progressive. Found myself in some rather illustrious company, the likes of Jessica Rose, Norman Fenton, to this day, like so many others, just trying to imagine that I might have been in this position were it not for the machinations of the platforms. Probably wouldn't be. And I think that's a positive that we can take from this, is that there are people from all different disciplines who have come together and who are working not just on this, but on much broader issues that society is facing right now. And I think this multidisciplinary approach, which includes people who aren't credentialed, who aren't necessarily experts in these various fields, is really important that we're included as well, and that we don't overlook the aspect of censorship that comes with not taking that into consideration.